I want you to think about the times you try to explain something to someone and they just seem too stupid to understand. These situations are massively infuriating and they just make you want to... Myself, I have also had plenty of these interactions, but then a good friend of mine gifted me this wonderful book, Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erikson. The book essentially explains the DISC personality model and it teaches us how to interact and effectively communicate with the 4 types of people. And I have to say, ever since I started implementing this advice, I have managed to get my point across more easily, build better relationship, and also persuade others to agree with me. Therefore, in this video, I want to explain to you what the 4 types of personalities are, how you can recognize them, and accordingly what you should do and what you shouldn't do if you want them to actively listen to you. So without further ado, let's see how the DISC model will help us master the art of communication. In short, the DISC model splits up personalities into 4 categories and colors: dominance, red; influence, yellow; steadiness, green; and conscientiousness, blue. Every one of us has one dominant personality type. However, the majority of people have a mixture of 2 personality types, and 50% have a mixture of 3 personality types. The model makes another distinction between task-oriented and people-oriented people. The reds and the blues being task-oriented, and the green and the yellow people being people-oriented. And you will see in a second that this orientation is clearly reflected in their behaviors. So let's discuss all the personality types one by one. Now, while we do this, I have a little challenge for you. I want you to try to match your friends, your family, or even yourself to one of the fitting colors. Okay, so reds are very competitive, strong-willed, results-oriented, and independent, which makes them really hard workers. They generally live by the idea that idle time is wasted time. And apart from that, they are also very direct and honest, which makes them great communicators. But this also means that they always say what they think. If you ask them for their opinion on your sweater and they think it's ugly, they will not think twice before telling you. This is one reason why many people perceive reds as insensitive. The other reason being that they think that feelings and emotions are completely irrelevant as long as a task is not achieved. Hence the task orientation I mentioned earlier. This obsession of reds to achieve their goals and win makes them really competitive and sometimes even causes them to break rules. They think, I have to beat everyone else. And that motivates them to do anything that will get them to their goal as fast as possible, which can appear somewhat toxic or unsympathetic. Yellows, who represent the characteristic influence, are generally extroverted, very energetic, optimistic, and super enthusiastic, which is why they always tend to deviate the view on things in a positive direction, therefore making the negative seem irrelevant. And in this way, they motivate you and share their positivity and good energy. Additionally, they are great problem solvers because they have very creative minds that enable them to come up with innovative ideas. Now, they are also very spontaneous, and this is clearly reflected in the way they work and speak. As for speaking, they make the mistake to think while they speak. Now, add on to this the fact that they are very energetic, and as a result, you get someone that speaks and just doesn't stop. I mean, how are you supposed to have a conversation with someone that doesn't listen but just speaks? On top of that, they also often have an attention span of a goldfish, and that makes them lose interest very quickly. So a long and time-consuming task is a no-go for yellows. But that is also due to their unorganized and unstructured nature. All in all, they can be really good at testing the limits of your patience. In case they do manage to drive you crazy, you will always have green, steady people that will be there for you. Because greens are caring, reliable, and good at listening. They are real team players and they always appreciate what you do. Essentially, their ultimate goal is to avoid conflict and discussion at all costs. And this can be good, but it can also be very infuriating. Infuriating because greens often tend to not directly express their opinions. So when a conflict does arise, they won't contribute to the search for a solution, but they will just hope that it eventually disappears. Now, them not directly expressing their opinions might make you think that they don't really have opinions. Well, if you do, you are wrong. Now, obviously, you couldn't have known, but greens are pig-headed and changing their opinion is basically impossible. It's about as difficult as putting in a USB stick into your computer on the first try. The last personality type I would like to introduce are the blues, the conscient ones. They are accurate, cautious, detail-oriented, and very systematic. They want, or better said, need to get everything 100% correct without cutting any edges. So give them a task and I guarantee you they will deliver good results. Maybe not on time, but nevertheless great results. Apart from that, their knowledge is very trustable. And blues could certainly use their knowledge to hunt prizes and awards, but they don't, because they just don't care about all these formalities and ways of showing appreciation. Now, although their perfectionism is one of their strengths, it is also one of their flaws, because to others it can come across as very negative and pessimistic. Essentially, people don't like that blues always have an improvement or something to complain about. So consequently, blues are not the most likable persons. That is also because blues have this idea that if you can't provide me with useful information, keep your mouth shut. And while some people can't handle this cold-heartedness. Anyways, another trait that isn't that important. What? Dude, you just said it's not that important. Yeah, but no, just shut up. I guess. Okay, so much about the 4 personality types. Now that you understood how they work individually, I will explain to you how you can adapt to them, what you shouldn't do if you want them to understand you, and how you can persuade them to agree with you. In case you are encountered with a red person, the dominant ones, you should keep in mind that they expect you to be fast, efficient, straightforward, and clear. So you need to cut the bullshit, stick to the topic, and state your points without any additional information. Also, I would recommend avoiding small talk because this will just make them feel like they are losing their time. Now, although they like being in control, they don't like people who don't stand by their opinions and just agree for the sake of avoiding a discussion. Thus, you should always be 100% honest and stand by your opinions and words. Even if you ultimately disagree, they will respect and appreciate you more. If you engage in a conversation with a yellow, well, things change a bit. In this case, you should aim to create a warm atmosphere, which you can do by being approachable and having an open body language. I actually recently read a book about body language by Alan Pease. And what I've learned from it is that to give off an inviting sentiment, our arms and legs should be uncrossed, because if they aren't, then people will think we're using them defensively. If you now also want to get your point across more efficiently, then you should start by leaving out the details at first. Because if you don't, the yellow person will lose their interest and attention. Now, if additionally you also want to gain their sympathy, you should show them that you're also very spontaneous, that you also follow your gut. This way they will see themselves in you and they will appreciate you more. Let's continue with the greens. Talking with greens about serious topics can become very challenging, but it's not like you can't avoid it. So what we need to do to successfully get our point across is first of all acknowledge that greens are driven by fear, and secondly encourage them to face their fears, because their fear will block their ability to actively listen to you. Thus, take it slow, reassure them, and help them face their fears. Don't just give them responsibilities and expect them to handle them on their own. Furthermore, so that they appreciate you, there are 2 main things you need to do. 1, you should always allow them to have their times of peace, quiet, and inactivity. Because if they don't have them, their brains will shut down. And 2, you should be patient. This means explaining everything step by step and in detail so that they don't feel overwhelmed. Last but not least, we have the blues. Considering they are so obsessed with efficiency and accuracy, we should always have a plan when we want to express something to a blue. You need to have your ideas, opinions, and facts ready, and you should think elaboratively how you want to formulate these. Thus, avoid spontaneity at all costs and express yourself clearly and well structured. On top of that, avoid talking about your personal lives and emotional situations because they are just unimportant and distractive things, at least for the blues. Now, as for the other 3 colors, we also want to gain their sympathy. And well, in this case, you have to adopt the analytical and systematical behavior of blues. Try genuinely caring more about precision and accuracy. Trust me, they will appreciate it. And that's it. Now you know how to recognize reds, yellows, greens, and blues, and possible ways how to adapt to them. However, there are still some very important things to keep in mind. So I have been proposing the idea that you should adapt to others. But I do want to mention that you should only do this to a certain extent. Because all personalities have their strengths and weaknesses, and you shouldn't adapt the bad characteristics just to agree with somebody. Furthermore, do not create fake personalities, because first of all, this will make the interaction really exhausting for you, and people are not dumb. They will notice that you're just trying to influence them. And once they notice that, they will become defensive. Also in a verbal and maybe physical way, but especially mentally. They will force themselves to find the negative in your proposition or opinion because they believe that you do not have their best interest in mind. And well, as a result, most if not everything you say will be misunderstood. Now, a last thing that I would like to tell you is that I do feel that this model is only portrayed as a method to improve communication. And it is, don't get me wrong. But if you really think about it, it can also be abused. The more understanding one has of a person, the more persuasive you become. But one can even develop manipulative and controlling capabilities. Obviously, I do not encourage you to behave like a psychopath, but I rather want you to use what you've learned today to notice if somebody is playing with you. You can consider your knowledge as an antivirus. Think about it. The software of an antivirus has to first understand how the viruses work, and then it can battle the actual viruses. Thus, knowing how manipulative people work will help you handle interactions safely. Anyways, to conclude, I would like to encourage you to actively use this DISC model since without practice, it won't be as helpful. You can use it in any social or work environment. Analyze your peers and colleagues and determine which personality type fits them best. And once you determine that, try different things and see how they react. Please also consider that human interaction is a very, very complex topic. And although you now have quite some understanding of this wonderful model, there's way more to learn. So maybe consider this the start of your journey to perfect and efficient communication. With that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope I was helpful. If I was, I would very much appreciate it if you would leave a like, and if you want to see more content that can help you upgrade your life, consider subscribing. And yeah, that's it. See you in the next video.